Will the gentlelady yield?
I yield.
Lady yield. Ms. Thompson, you discussed rape and incest. And when there's a baby as a result of incest or rape inside a woman, wouldn't you consider that an ongoing assault?
I consider it ongoing assault, and I also consider the child who is born who has to live with that scarlet letter on him for the rest of his life.
You know, this House has discussed many options, and I can stand here and tell you that I'm not opposed to a limited ban at 20 weeks, but I'm opposed to all the other stuff in this bill, and I'm opposed to the people not accepting rational amendments like this. And one of the things is, well, how could this occur? Why wouldn't she be able to make a decision before 20 weeks?
It's difficult, but you know what I'm also concerned about? People who have a right to be pro-life, and I fight for that right for them, but they do not support the right for that child to have prenatal care, postnatal care, a decent housing, educational opportunities, jobs and things. Those happen to be rights that goes along with life, and they fight for those kids to have those rights.
Point of order is well taken and sustained. Chair recognizes Chairman Guerin.
Visitors, we're proud to have you here, but any more disruptions of the House events you will be removed, and if we have to clear the entire gallery, we will. So you're welcome to sit there and watch the proceedings, but you're not welcome to interrupt any of it. So sit there quietly and observe, or we'll ask you to leave.
Chair recognizes Representative Laubenberg to speak against the amendment.
Mr. Speaker, I move to table this.
Mr. Canales, for a purpose.
Will the gentlelady yield for a question?
Oh, can I go ahead and speak? No, I go ahead and do my... Okay.
Not this time.
Just a moment. Okay, members, I have moved to table this amendment. As you heard, there is now no restriction on how far along the pregnancy is. And again, this bill is focusing on that at 5 months, that baby will feel the pain of abortion. So at 5 months, 6 months, 9 months, that baby will feel the pain of abortion. And no one denies the seriousness, as I've spoken before, of what rape and incest does to a woman. That is still in the law now. That is legal and will continue to be legal. When this bill passes, the woman will have the ability to have an abortion for 5 months. But at 5 months and beyond, we are now talking a child that can feel that pain. And so respectfully, Mr. T, I move to table.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Canales, for a purpose.
Will the gentlelady yield?
Laubenberg, do you yield?
I do.
Laubenberg, this amendment deals with rape and incest, and I understand what you're saying, but who feels the woman's pain? Who feels her pain?
She will feel the pain.
For life. Let me ask you a question. Not long ago, there was an incident where 2 young ladies were locked up and held hostage in Cleveland, Ohio, later to be found multiple times pregnant. What would happen in their case where they would have gotten out, let's just say right after 20 weeks? You don't think an exception like this makes sense for someone like that and her pain? Her being housed and raped and held hostage? My question to you is, what do we do for their pain? This House representative needs to consider logical exceptions, and for you to move to table this, you're not even considering it. Why won't you consider this amendment?
And Representative Canales, we do have rape and incest now. Now you're talking 5 months, 6 months, 7 months, 9 months. the day before a child would conceivably be born. There is the provision for rape and incest.
Thank you, Representative.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Moody, for a purpose.
will the gentlelady yield for some questions?
Moody, yield for question.
Representative,
Yes, I do.
you understand that under the federal law, anything after 24 weeks is really not an option except under very extreme circumstances, correct?
I'm sorry, Representative Moody, what was?
So under federal law, you understand that, which applies to us here, what this amendment is really looking at is not going after 7, 8, 9 months the day before birth. I think that's incorrect characterization of this amendment. What we're looking at is 4 weeks. 4 weeks on top of what is included in the bill already as an exception there. Is that, so those 4 weeks, that's unacceptable to you?
Okay. Representative Moody, I'm not advised.
You're moving to table it, so it's not acceptable to you.
I'm moving to table this amendment based on the fact that at 5 months the baby will feel the pain of that abortion.
You know, and we had this discussion before. I've actually, and I know that you've met with people, you've talked with people that have been the victim of rape. And I brought that rape kit for an example today because I think we need to really get a handle on what situation we're talking about. I want you at some point, and I know we have a long day ahead of us, to look in there so you know what it actually does. And the violation that a woman has to go through to get to that point. Look at the type of examination that's going to happen to her if she's brave enough, if she's willing to go to the doctor in enough time. I want you to look through there. It's not a fun thing to look through. I've presented evidence like that in court where women have been violated. And I know the difficult decision that it takes for them just to get to the door of the doctor, just to get to the door of the courthouse, to stand and face their assailant. And what this amendment does is ask for 4 additional weeks, when you take it in context with federal law, to look at this exception for rape and incest. Is that unacceptable to you?
Representative Moody, again, we know what a child is going through. We know what a woman goes through. 2, in the life of a 5-month-old that can feel the pain. We still have rape and incest that is.
So an extension from 20 to 24 weeks, which is what this amendment would do, is unacceptable to you.
I've answered your question, Representative Moody.
How about, would you accept an amendment at 23 weeks for rape and incest?
Representative Moody, I'm talking about this amendment, and no, I would not accept that.
So, what about 22 weeks? Are we going to have a real discussion about a very serious topic in that we are essentially debating 4 weeks in the most extreme cases of rape and incest? Is that something that you're willing to even discuss?
Representative Moody, that's why we are here. We're having a discussion on this whole issue.
So you won't, so 24 weeks you've moved to table, that's unacceptable. Is 23 weeks acceptable?
Representative Moody, my position is still the same.
22?
It is still the same.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Speaker.
Representative Burkett.
Yes, will the lady yield for a question, please?
I will.
Lady yields.
Representative Albenberg, does it specify in that amendment if the perpetrator has to be reported or charges made against that person before they can claim rape for an abortion?
No, I believe it does not.
Okay, additionally, I know that the main purpose of this bill with you was the fetal pain portion of the bill and the fact that the baby feels pain in the womb at 20 weeks and on, correct?
That is correct.
And Representative Thompson was very gracious to give us a description of a rape. Can you give me a description of what happens to a baby after 20 weeks for those 4-week period if the woman decides on abortion? How does that happen?
What is involved in aborting a 5-month-old?
Correct.
Well, I have here a testimony from Dr. Anthony Levatino, who spoke at the U.S. House of Representatives, and he describes that at 5 months, the procedure begins with the first instrument you reach for is a 14 French suction catheter. It's a clear plastic and about 9 inches long. It has a bore through the center, approximately 3/4 of an inch in diameter. You introduce this catheter through the cervix and instructing the circulating nurse to turn on the suction machine. What you will see is a pale yellow fluid that looks a lot like urine coming through the catheter into a glass bottle on the suction machine. This is the amniotic fluid that surrounds the baby to protect the baby. When the suction is complete, you then use a sulfur clamp. This instrument is about 13 inches long and made of stainless steel. At the end of it are located jaws about 2.5 inches long and about 3/4 of an inch wide with rows of sharp ridges or teeth. This instrument is used for grasping and crushing tissue. When it gets a hold of something, it does not let go. A second trimester D&E abortion has begun. Since the baby can be in any orientation or position inside the uterus, you are grasping at anything you can. The uterus is thin and soft, and it is subject to potential perforation or puncturing of the walls. The toughest part of the D&E abortion at that stage is extracting the baby's head. At that age, the head is about the size of a large plum and is now floating free after you have crushed and pulled out the parts. So it leaves the head floating inside the uterine cavity. You will know you have it right when you crush down on the clamp and see white.
Representative Stickland raises the point of order. The gentlelady's time has expired. The point of order is well taken and sustained.
My point is that the pain. And I move the table.
Thank you.
Chair now recognizes Representative Thompson to close.
I'm not going to accept any questions at this time, but I will yield to my colleague. Members, I want to just tell you this. I've seen so many of you fight for the First Amendment and how important that First Amendment right to you to fight for. I've definitely seen you fight for the Second Amendment, where you embrace so much. Now, don't you think the 14th Amendment, that a woman's choice is important too? Or do you want her to go to the back alleys where somebody's going to be taking an object and jabbing it and jabbing it and jabbing it up into her uterus until that child is dead, and this abortion takes place and she's standing there hemorrhaging, and there's not even a hospital within a 30-mile radius for her to get to, and she dies? Have you thought about that? Have you thought about how you drive women back to the coat hanger days where the illegal abortion has taken place? And they still going to take place because they cannot afford to raise the money to go and have a legal procedure performed. But they go into the back alleys of those persons who are supposed to have some kind of expertise, and they perform. Not at this time. And they perform.
Not at this time, Mr. King.
They perform the illegal abortion so that those persons who could not afford to travel to those clinics, those 5 little remaining clinics that'll be left down, and what do? They go and they take the coat hanger method as a means of eliminating rape and incest. And what you're telling me is, it's all right within the 24 months, which is legal by the federal government, for you to have any kind of procedure. But if you happen to be raped, or if you happen to be a victim of incest, then you don't think it's all right. Just let the daddy be the grandfather and the father too. Let the uncle be the father and the uncle. Let the stepfather be the stepfather and the daddy too.
Mr. Speaker.
Not at this time.
Mr. King, the lady does not yield at this time.
Open to ask for some specific questions on the amendment.
So have you decided that what you're going to do to those persons who happen to be poor and cannot travel, who don't have the money to access the facilities where they can go and have this procedure done? Have you considered the amount of time and the money that it costs that they don't have? And what you're doing is you're making a class separation here. For the wealthy who can afford it, they can travel anywhere in the United States, within the state. And for the poor, you just happen to be up a creek without a pedal. And you can go to the back alleys where the coat hanger is used. Or you can go to the back alley where they can take a knitting needle and push and push and push and push until the woman hemorrhage, and hopefully she may survive and she might become sterile as a result of it. Women have a choice. And we talked about fetal pain a moment ago. But the law of the land is viability. The law of the land is viability. The law of the land is viability. And it's not fetal pain. Because fetal pain happens to be something that is still an unproven medical term that they're trying to prove. But viability has been set in the law at the federal level that we recognize, and 24 weeks have to be set there. And for those of you who happen to be mothers, you know, it took a while for you to determine that you were pregnant, and it wasn't the next day. It took a while before you became aware of the fact that you were carrying a child. But members, I'm asking you, are you willing to force these young women to carry the child of a rapist or an incestuous person? Are you willing for that? I hope that you're not. I hope that you would recognize the fact that you voted for this amendment last session.
Mr. Speaker.
Not at this time.
Mr. King, not at this time.
Does the lady intend to yield at some point?
I plan to yield if you let me. I'll yield to my colleague. Just a moment. Let me tell you this. I understand that the author is not wanting to accept this amendment, but I honestly believe that it is an important issue that must be addressed. Women have a right to have their choice. The law gives them that right. Women are not dumb and stupid. They know how to make decisions for themselves. And they just didn't need for the day to happen for this body to finally decide to make a decision for them. They've been making decisions all of their lives. Just the thought of the word rape and incest by a member of the family is traumatic enough. Just the thought of a person being raped is a very traumatic experience. The unfortunate thing is, I know that you wouldn't want anyone in this state or any part of the United States to be a victim of rape and incest. And I hope that this amendment goes on, this bill, because women have a right not to live as a victim for the rest of their lives because of the situation that has happened to them as a result of rape and incest. Women victimized twice, first by the act of forced rape or forced incest, and then they're victimized by the fact of having to carry that child. And then the child is victimized because society will never let that child live it down, that they were the result of incest or they were the result of rape. In 9 months, the woman is reminded of her rape because that child comes. That child is born. Every day when that child kicks in that mother's womb, she's reminded of the fact that she is carrying a child of an incestuous relationship or a rape victim. Every time she has morning sickness, she's reminded of the fact that she is a victim of rape or incest.
Ms. Thompson, or Mr. Speaker.
Not at this time.
Not at this time, Mr.
This is
King.
not an act of God. This is act of a violent criminal act that has been perpetrated upon innocent people, the woman. And why would you want to victimize her twice and then live the rest of her life as a victim of rape and as a victim of incest? Why would you want to do that? Why would you want to force them back into the back alleys of illegal means of abortion? And why would you want to force them to drink turpentine or to use a knitting needle in order to jab up in their uterus in order to be able to have an abortion because of the shame and the degradation that they feel and having been violated? This bill, in my opinion, is a bill that denies the women the right of choice. And women, believe me, are intelligent enough to understand, and they're intelligent enough to know that they can make the decision for themselves. Just because the law allows them that latitude doesn't mean that they may want to select it, but it's available to them. And I think that that is the thing that we should be conscious of. The greatest level of evil is force. Forced rape, forced incest, and then you're going to force them to have a child. You're going to force them to do this against their will, and that child is going to walk around like with a scarlet letter on him or her for the rest of their lives. I don't think that that's fair. I think that's a violation of that person's constitutional right. The law allows them to be able to have these procedures, and why are you want to limit them and force them to be able to carry a child because of incest and let somebody be not only the father but also the daddy? Not only the...
Representative Burkett raises a point of order. The lady's time has expired. The point of order is well taken and sustained.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. King.
Move to extend the time.
Members, this is the first extension of time. Is there any objection? Chair is none. The lady's time has been extended.
And if Ms. Thompson would graciously take the front mic, as she had agreed she would yield at some point, it would be deeply appreciated. Thank you, Ms. Thompson.
Mrs. Thompson has yielded the floor, Mr. King.
Is there anyone that would like to answer questions about the amendment?
I don't see them.
Are we still available to have people speak against the amendment, or is that opportunity closed?
Mr. King, Representative King, we had a motion to table. That cuts off all debate. Then the author of the amendment has availed the opportunity to close. Ms. Thompson took her 10 minutes to close. That time has expired. She's yielded the floor.
And has refused to answer any questions on the amendment.
That's correct.
Thank you.
So we are now at the point of voting on the motion to table.
Will
the amendment.
Ms. Lavenberg be closing on the amendment now, closing on her motion to table now?
As you know, Mr. King, the author of the amendment is who has the opportunity for final closing, and Mrs. Lavenberg came up and made the motion to table, has her debate on that motion, and then Ms. Thompson was given the opportunity through the rules to close on the amendment that had been moved to table.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Thompson offers up an amendment. Representative Laudenberg has moved to table that amendment. A record vote has been requested. A record vote is granted. Show Mrs. Thompson voting no. Show Mrs. Waddenberg voting aye. Have all members voted? Have all voted? There being 90 ayes and 54 nays, the motion to table prevails.